1936, Germany's Reich Air Ministry paid the town of WOLGAST 750,000 Reichsmarks for the exclusive use of a large area of land near the mouth of the Peene River on the Baltic coast. 2 years later, it had nearly completed a facility which included an army research centre and a Luftwaffe test site. The HEEVES Versuchsstelle Peenemunde, abbreviated as HVP, became one of 5 military proving grounds and the site for the development of several World War II guided missiles. The most notorious was the world's first operational liquid fuel rocket, the V2, known to its designers as the A4. The V2 rocket was the progenitor of all modern rockets and a direct forerunner of the Saturn V moon rocket. It was the first ballistic missile and the first man-made object launched into space. It also took an extraordinary amount of testing to get right. When finally used against the Allies in World War II, V2 rockets were responsible for the deaths of around 7,000 people. But 20,000 had died during construction of them. Most of those were slave labour workers from the Mittelbau-Dora concentration camp. As Roy Irons pointed out in his book Hitler's Terror Weapons, however, by 1943 the Germans were doing so badly in the war that Hitler was determined to press on with testing the weapon in order to build German morale and show his troops the war was still winnable. But still the testing gave rise to embarrassments and mistakes. In April 1943, the commander of the SS, Heinrich Himmler, came to Peenemunde with the intention of taking control of the research and development program in order to expand his power base. But before he could indulge in the inevitable power play with the leaders of the program, Walter Dornberger and Werner von Braun, a faulty test saw one of the rockets land on Himmler's own plane, and it was back to the drawing board for the rocket once again. From the original missile design to the day the V2s were finally put into production, 65,000 changes were made. In August 1943, the Allied forces bombed Peenemunde, causing disruption and the loss of several months of development. The main production of V2s was moved to the underground Mittelwerk factory near Nordhausen. War shortages also had an effect. Testing had begun in March 1942, but unexplained in-flight disintegrations resulted in an 80% failure rate. There was a veritable litany of errors, such as rockets exploding at liftoff, noses breaking off, and steam generators misbehaving. But still the Germans persevered, realizing that if they could get the V2 to work, its supersonic and therefore silent flight would make it a formidable weapon. One that, unlike its predecessor, the V1 flying bomb or the Doodlebug, would give no warning to unsuspecting targets. And on the 3rd of October, 1942, they finally got it right, with the V2's first successful flight. Just over 6,000 V2s were built, and as many as 3,225 were launched against Allied territory, beginning in September 1944, with attacks on the recently liberated Paris. Other targets included Belgium, England, and the Netherlands, with Antwerp and London being the hardest hit. Around 2,700 civilians were killed in London, with the last British civilian to die being 34-year-old Mrs. Ivy Millichamp at her home in Orpington. Despite this, overall the V2 lacked effectiveness. Its guidance systems weren't sophisticated enough. At $2 billion US, the program was extremely expensive, and basically it all came too late. What the program did do, though, was to lay the foundations for the space race that would take off only a few short years later.
Three, two, one.